Hey everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm coming to you today with a pretty simple video. I'm just gonna go over how to chop up a vocal sample. I kept it pretty simple. The only things in the sample are the vocals and just one or two other instruments. I kind of wanted to keep it stripped down more to just help with a more basic tutorial. That way it's easier for somebody that maybe doesn't have as much experience to do this. So without further ado, let's go on and get started. So the first thing, of course, I have the sample pulled up in YouTube here. I went to a page that I'm familiar with. That I use it all the time when I make music myself personally. It's a good page for samples that you want to use of any kind. It has all kinds of genres of music. And when I look it up, I just use his first name. His name is Oleg, O-L-E-G, and then I just look up samples. There's numerous ways you can look up samples on YouTube, whatever genre you're looking for. We're going to go over hip-hop sampling today, but there's numerous ways you can look it up, just so you know in the future. So this is the sample that I have. We're going to go ahead and play it. I'm going to play about 30 seconds of it, and then I'll kind of give a rundown of what I'm going to sample in it and why. Okay, we'll go ahead and pause it there because it's starting to go into a section where you're not really going to use it for a sample. You could if you wanted to, but the beginning section that I highlighted there in the first 30 seconds that I played is really what you're going to sample. You can choose any of the phrasings that she's using, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would go about it. The first thing that I would do after I go ahead and do this, before I go ahead and choose what I'm going to sample and how I'm going to chop it up, I'm going to go ahead and rip the sample out of the video itself. So let me show you how I do that. I'm going to go over here to my next tab. It's called YouTube to Wave Converter. I'll just show you how I actually find it instead of just showing you the tab itself. So I just look up YouTube to Wave on my Google search. It's the first thing that comes up. It's called downloader2.com, and it's just an easy way for you to rip waves from any kind of YouTube video that has an audio file in it, basically. And you can get any kind of audio type that you want, but you usually want to go with a wave type file. That's normally what most people use in most types of media. Okay, so we went ahead, we've got one we downloaded earlier. Let's go ahead and add the one that we're listening to now. Okay, so we're going to highlight the URL. We're going to copy it over here, paste it, hit download. It opens a pop-up window. All you have to do is close the pop-up window. It's really simple. You just go right back to the page. The pop-up window is really for it to open this download in progress bar. And then once it says downloaded, you can click the button. It doesn't take but a minute. I mean, while I'm talking, it's probably going to finish here in the next 30 seconds. There we go. Hit download. Again, it's going to come up with a pop-up window. Just back out of it one more time. It's no big deal. Now you can go ahead and minimize your internet browser, whatever you're using. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my Finder. I'm going to go to my downloads. This is where the file went to. So this is the file that we just downloaded. We're going to move it over to my desktop. Okay, we're going to close out the Finder. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and click this over. We're going to take my face out of here. Now you're just going to hear my voice for the rest of the video until near the end of the video. So this is Fruity Loops. This is where I process all of my music when I chop it up and I sample it. The first thing you want to do before you do anything else is click Song in this little top left corner right here. You do not want to click Pattern. We're not making a pattern right now. We're going to make a chop up sample that we're sending over to GarageBand. So we're only going to use this really as a processing unit, more like a mixing board rather than an actual chop up tool. Okay, So the next thing we're going to do, click Add. It's the third one over. Click Add. You're going to go all the way over to this word Effect. You're going to go down to the second column. About the second category under Miscellaneous, you're going to click Edison, like the inventor Thomas Edison. And then you're going to click Load Sample. Now earlier, just about a minute and a half ago, you remember we moved the sample over to desktop. So now we're just going to go grab it from the desktop. And click it here. You click the sample that you want. This is the sample that we just made. So now we're going to click Open. Now it brings the waveform up for you to see. Now there's all kinds of things you can do to edit the waveform. We're just going to focus today on moving the waveform from the Edison software over to the piano roll behind us on the screen. Okay, so how we do that is we grab this tool right here, and you see when I hover my cursor over it, in the top left corner under the tab of File and all the other miscellaneous titles, you see Drag, Copy Sample, or Selection. So that's what we're going to click. We're going to click it, and don't just click it and tap. You're going to click it, you're going to hold it, because now you have control of this sample. So you can put it in whatever track you want. We're going to put it in track 1. So now this is how I can edit my sample. Before I put it in GarageBand, I can speed it up, I can change the pitch, I can do all kinds of stuff to it. We're going to worry about where the sample starts to create a loop when we get it into GarageBand. We're going to worry about all the mixing stuff for right now. You're going to mix it separately in GarageBand, but as far as actually making the sample sound the way it does, the pitch and the speed, specifically, you're going to do that in Fruity Loops. So default, the BPM you see up here is 130. We're going to change that here in a minute. The first thing we're going to do before we do that, we're going to go into this mode right here. When you click on the sample, you double click it, it brings up this right here. So you're going to see mode, you're going to click resample where it's defaulted, you're going to click stretch. So now that allows you to change the speed and pitch of the sample. You can change the speed and the pitch, or you can just change one. It's kind of up to you. That's where the creativity in making the beat comes in. That's your personal, choice, so to speak. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, now that we've got stretch enacted, we're going to go ahead and listen to the sample for a second to hear where it is right now. So really, ideally, I'd like to bring it up. I don't really like it as low as it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to pitch the sample up. We're going to go back to that window by double clicking the sample again. See how I did that again? And instead of going to your mode here, you're going to go to the pitch knob right here. And you're going to move it. And as you move it, you can see how in the top left corner again it displays the cents that you're changing. And all that really means in technical terms, we're going to keep it simple, it just means you're changing the pitch a certain frequency. That's all it really means. You don't have to get super technical about it. So all we're going to do is move it 50 cents. So we'll see what that sounds like. We're going to play that, and if that sounds good, we'll go with that. If not, we'll change it. This is the part of kind of finding your sound in your sample. What sound do you want the sample to make? Do you want it to be in a specific key? Do you want it to be a specific pitch? That's what we're doing right now. So now we can observe that I didn't move it high enough up. So now we're going to go over here to the same pitch thing. We left the window open. Just leave your window open while we're working on this. You're going to go over to, and you're going to hit up to, let's go up to 5. And then let's try going over 100 now. And let's see what difference that makes now. Because we really want it to actually pitch up a difference where you can really hear the difference between the original and the new one. Because that one you really couldn't hear much difference. Okay, we're closer. I think all we're going to do now is just go up to number 8. So let's try going up to 8. You'll follow along with me. We started at 2, remember? So now we're going to go all the way up to 8. And now we're going to move it over to 150. If I can get 150. We'll just do 152 since my finger doesn't want to settle on 150. Okay, the semitone, the range is perfect. Now we're just going to increase the sends. Let's move it to about 300. If we can get it exactly on 300, okay, awesome. Okay. Now you can kind of hear how it has that chipmunk sound of the early 2000s and the late 90s. That's kind of what I was going for. This is more of a simple vocal chop, so that's kind of the sound that we're going for. Let me see if I can get it exactly on 450 before we play it. Okay, it's close enough. Okay, that's perfect. Now we've got the sound of the way we want it to sound. The sample has the pitch, it has everything correct. So now we want to see if we want to change anything right here. The only thing we're going to mess with in this session, let's see if the fade stereo changes it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the wave form of your sample, which is this right here again. If you look at my cursor, I'm kind of highlighting around it. This is your waveform. So sometimes if you hit the fade stereo, sometimes it makes your sample sound a little bit crisper. It just depends on how big your waveform is and on how much it's going to reduce it, because sometimes it makes the sample so quiet that you can't hear it. And then sometimes it reduces the noise enough to where it's more clear to the listener. So it really just depends on what you're doing. In this case, the sample is not real big, so we're going to hit it just to see what it does, but I don't think in this case that we're going to actually need it. I just want you as a listener to hear the difference between the original and the faded stereo. So this is what it sounds like when you hit fade stereo. So you see how it really kind of makes it more tinny. It makes the sound more of a mono sound rather than a stereo sound. It's kind of why it's titled like that. In this case, we're going to leave the fade stereo off just because this part of the sample is right here. This is the beginning of your track, and this is the end of your track. So really, if your sample and your waveform looks like this, you have this much space on each side. So you don't really need to clean a whole lot up before you process it. So now we don't need to do anything else. The only thing we need to do now before we move it, you're going to go to File. And I will say too, if you want to clean as far as how long the sample is, because we're only going to use the first 8 measures or so. So just go over, kind of zoom out on the piano roll like I just did there. You just kind of zoom in and then zoom all the way out. And then we're going to take the sample all the way down to about 16 measures. Because we're only going to use about 8 measures, so we don't need the sample that we're exporting to be that large. That way it's not going to be a gigantic file and it'll move over even faster. So I did all that fast. Let me go over it with you again. We're going to go to File, Export, Wave File, and then you could title the sample. The way I usually do it, I should just go by the title of the original sample and then I put on the end of the title sample. That way I know in my files this is my sample and this is the original file that it came from, that it was sampled from. So we're going to type in Gypsy, bring back the light sample. Okay. So now that's all saved. You're going to get Save, click Save. Now it's going to bring you a window that looks like this. It's going to say rendering to, you know, whatever sample that you're using in this case. In this case, this is the one that I'm using. You're going to go all the way down. You don't need to mess with any of this for this lesson. We're not going to mess with any of this. We're going to leave all this alone. You're going to go all the way down, click Start. And all it really did just then was converted it to the file that you asked it to and put it in the file location that you asked it to be in. So now we're going to go to GarageBand. This is the funnest and the easiest part of making a sample. So pull up your GarageBand. I'll go ahead and click a new one just so you can see what it looks like if you've never opened GarageBand. So when you open GarageBand, it's going to give you an option of an empty project. You can do all these kind of different templates. We're going to go with an empty project because we're just making a simple hip-hop vocal sample. So it's going to ask you to then choose a track type. You're going to choose software instrument. Click Create. We don't need the keyboard for this application. We're going to go ahead and go back to the Finder. Okay. Now you see that this is the sample that we made earlier and this is the original. So the original I usually just keep as a file saved. That way if I ever need it for any reason it's right there and I just have access to it, and I go ahead and put it in a file that I call samples, and I keep all my samples in that folder. So I suggest you do the same. It just makes it more efficient to keep track of what you're doing. So we're going to click the sample that we made, and we're going to drag it right into GarageBand, just like that. It's real simple. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and go up here. You're going to click the track that it created. You're going to go ahead and delete that. That's just Command Delete. That's all you have to do to delete that. And then this is kind of a key aspect of chopping up samples, which most people don't get correct, is knowing when to start your sample or start your loop, so to speak. So all I'm going to do, this is what I've done forever and I've produced for years now, and this has always worked for me. It's tried and true and it's really easy. So all you're going to do is you're going to zoom in on the sample, go to the very beginning of the sample, measure 1, beat 1, and then you're going to kind of zoom in. Don't zoom in completely, but kind of zoom in, and you see how much space there is right here? You see all this space? We're going to cut all this out. So we're going to bring it forward, grab it with your cursor and keep bringing it forward. And then we're going to get kind of close, but not right exactly on. You're going to leave a little bit of space because you want to get exactly close as you can. So now when you zoom in further, you can actually see that the waveform is completely blank. It's almost like a heart monitor. A waveform is very similar to a heart monitor, the way they look. So the more waves you have, the more sound is being produced. So when you have no activity, that means no sound is being produced quite yet. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to go ahead and bring that all the way in. You see it starts right about here. This is probably when the engineer turns the board on, this little blip right here. That way it records, and then this is when the actual music is playing. Because you can see there's no actual waveform, it's just a blip of recognition of sound. It's just right here, which is probably, I've seen it on so many waveforms, I'm assuming it's the sample of the engineer or the producer turning the board on to record, or whatever's recording in that instance. So we're going to keep bringing it all the way in. Grab your cursor one more time with me. We're going to bring it all the way over. Now drag it back to beat 1, measure 1, now that you've cut that off. Okay, and now we're going to bring it over just a little bit more, and now it's right on the sample. You see how now when we zoom in completely, let me get off this little, you see now when we zoom in completely that the waveform is right there and it's already started. So now when you click the sample and you play it, it should start exactly from when the music starts, not when there's space in the record or when it hasn't started recording yet. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to click the loop button, which I just did. It's your cycle or your loop button. I call it the loop button. It's just easier to remember that way. That's usually what it's used for. So I use, on this sample, I'm probably going to go 6 to 8 measures. Let's listen to it real quick, and then we'll decide how long it's going to be, because I believe it's 6 to 8 measures. I just want to make double sure before we actually move it around. You go ahead and turn your metronome off and your counter off because they're not going to apply in this situation. Just do it one more time. Okay, so that's the sample pretty much. I was almost right on the money. So it's a 6-bar sample. So you're really gonna move this up just about a bar or two, because if you actually listen to where the sample stops and starts, it starts right here, of course. So you see here how after this part right here, let me turn the loop function off. If I start playing it right about here in the middle of measure 5, go and follow along. Go to middle of measure 5 and click this right here. Okay, go ahead and play it. You hear how right here at almost the beginning of measure 7, it just repeats what starts right here at measure 1. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about looping. You're just looping a piece of material that's already going to be looped right here by the artist when they composed it. You're just looping it to make it sound more efficient, to create a loop, and to also not get yourself sued. Because most of the time, if you're sampling longer than 15 seconds, you can get copyright claims. So you always want to be aware of the fact that you want to be creative with people's music and how you sample, but you also want to be aware of the ramifications of how long the sample is. So you never want your sample to be extremely long or egregious. Otherwise, you're just, you're taking somebody's track, and we never want to do that. Okay, so now all we're really going to do now that we have the sample in here, we're just going to do a couple more things. I want to get the loop right on to where it starts and stops exactly. So we're going to do that real quick. We're going to adjust this tempo because we're already really close. So we're going to zoom in some more on our waveform. And then all we're really looking for now is when does the sample stop exactly to the next chord that's played on measure 7 that I just spoke to you guys about. When does that chord almost exactly start? Because when that chord exactly starts is when this should start and this on measure 6 should be cut off. So it should sound like this is in a perpetual loop with no interruptions. Ideally, that's what it should sound like when you chop up a sample. It should sound like it starts here, goes to here, and then it starts here and it's seamless. So it should sound like there's no interruptions. So now we're just going to spend the next couple minutes doing that with the tempo here. We're going to expand it and kind of shrink it to make it fit so it exactly loops the way you want it to. And it's really close already, so let's just spend a few tries narrowing it down, and then you'll be able to hear the difference between a loop that's been finished and then a loop that's just been chopped up. Okay, we're going to zoom in as we're listening. Kind of follow along with your cursor. Okay, so it looks like we actually need to bring it to right about here, because it sounds like we're a little bit short of where it needs to be. And let's try that. We're going to make it just one shorter. Let's try that. Just listening to make sure it sounds correct. Now, the simple part and the fun part about sampling is it looks easy. The hardest part is really just learning how to get the sample in your head when you're listening to the song itself. So let me bring that back up one more time. We're going to go back to the sample on YouTube, and I'm going to show you how I heard that. Because when I open this and I play it, let's play it. See, and when I initially listened to it, I paused it right there, and I heard, okay, it just repeats. So it repeats the phrase twice, which is an easy technique for beginning producers or people that are just learning how to produce, or people, even if you kind of know what you're doing, but you want to get better at consistently being able to find a sample. That is an easy technique for people to be able to use for you to create samples that sound like you. The part that makes it sound like you is how you chop it up. The easy part of the technique is just finding measures that are repeated. That's where you can find your sample, because you're really just looping what the artist already looped themselves. You're just looping it at a shorter distance, where she looped it at measure 16 because she repeated the same 8 bars twice. You looped it at measure 6, and then it starts at beat 1 again. Like I said, because of sample rules and things like that. So now we're going to minimize YouTube. Once again, we're going to go back to the sample, and we're going to listen to it one more time. And then I want to do a couple more things with it before we're finished today, okay? Okay. So what I want to do now that the sample actually sounds the way we want it to and it loops the way we want it to, let's go ahead and cut off the rest of the sample. When you have a sample chopped up correctly, you don't need to keep the excess around, it just looks messy. That way, if you do want to loop it like this, it's easy. You can just loop it like that, or you can copy and paste it like that, Command C, Command V, just like that, however you want to do it. So what we'll do for today, I like doing Command C, Command V. It just looks cleaner to me rather than having the same thing looped over and over. Okay, so now we're going to make it 12 measures, excuse me. So used to 8 measures. So now we're going to have 2 6-measure loops back to back, and we'll see what that sounds like. This is where you really get to see if your loop is really correct, because when it plays back to back, if there's any mess up right here, you're going to hear it as it plays right next to each other. Okay, go ahead and hit play. Okay. So because the sample is chopped up, you can't hear anything. And that's what I was talking about earlier. When you chop up a sample, you want it to sound seamless. You want it to sound like it starts here, and it really never ends. It just plays on a loop forever. That's why it's called a loop. That's why that term is used so endearingly in the hip-hop community, because if a loop is done correctly, it's just as catchy as a great pop song. So now we're going to go ahead and save it. Make sure you save it. Gypsy sample. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. I just named it Gypsy sample. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here now. We're going to focus on the control panel. So click this button right here. It looks like a little dial, like a volume knob. We're going to click that. We're going to go to our control panel. This is default what comes up when you open an audio track like this. It's not really like anything I pulled up. So this is what you're going to normally see in GarageBand when you pull these kind of files up. So we're going to go to the compressor right here. You see this is your amount knob that I'm kind of circling around. Go ahead and click that. Click this little switch right here. This is going to turn your compressor on. And what a compressor does is it basically highlights the details of a sound. So if there's tinny sounds, if there's high notes, if there's dynamicism in the sound, if there's a low growl to the sound, it highlights the definitions of sounds, and it allows you to hear the frequency of them without them being so coarse and so harsh. So in simple terms, it really just kind of cleans up the different frequencies of sound and allows them to be more malleable to your ear. That way they sound smoother. Okay. So this is the compressor knob itself. You can have it turned on as little or as much as you want. I tend to turn it on about 75% of the way because you want to compress some of the sound You don't want to compress the whole sample all the time. Some samples, because of how dense the dynamics in the sample are, you want to compress the entire track. But some samples, when they're like this one, and the waveform isn't that big, you don't want to compress the entire track because it almost condenses too much of the waveform to where it kind of takes away the dynamics. So in a way, a compressor is really a way of adding smoothness to your sound without taking too much of the raw quality of the sound that allows the sound to be unique, like a trumpet or a tuba, or you see what I'm saying? So we're going to turn it on right here, like I said, about 75%, and now we're going to play it one more time to hear the difference. I just want you to hear the difference between no compressor. I'm going to play the first 6 measures. Okay, so now we're going to turn the compressor on that we just hooked up. And one last thing before we go ahead and run this track, go over here to your bottom left side. Do you see this thing that says noise gate on your second window right here? Just kind of ignore this for now. Don't even mess with recording settings. Just come down here where it says noise gate. Click that. All that really does for your tracks and your samples is it creates a gate for the samples to not go above as far as the dynamics of the sound. So it allows the sound to have room to breathe without becoming distorted or clipping your audio. And all your audio does when it clips is the sound is becoming distorted to where it's becoming over the gate, and then the gate is processing that and producing a clipping sound. So that's what that actually means when you're clipping. You really want to keep a decent noise gate on your stuff when you're making music of any kind, whether that's hip-hop or any genre. So make sure when you're always making stuff that you turn your noise gate on. It's always going to sit right about here in the middle. You don't want it to be too high or too low. You want it to sit right about here in the middle. And it kind of sits there in default position, so you don't really need to mess with it. Just make sure you turn it on. Okay? Alright, so we're going to go ahead and play the sample now with the compression added. And you can really hear a big difference in the pronunciation of the singer's words. You can really hear the S's and all the vowel sounds that she's making when she's singing. And you can also hear the dynamics of the accompanying instrument a lot better. Now, I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm only going to play the first 3 measures because I really want you to hear the difference on a compressor versus no compressor on your track. It makes a huge difference. No compressor. Okay. Compressor. Now, it's a small difference, but it makes a huge impression on the listener's ear. The singer's voice is much more full, excuse me. You can hear the pronunciation much better. The accompanying instrument, again, pokes out so much better. So small things like that, once you chop up a vocal sample, are such a big deal. It's kind of a total package. You want to be able to bring it into Fruity Loops, process it. That's important in itself. And then you want to bring it over here, chop it up, kind of put it, wherever you want to put it, and then arrange it how you want to arrange it. And then make sure before you always finish a track that you always come over here to your control panel and turn your compressor on to at least 50 to 75%. Don't try to turn it on below 50% because to me it kind of takes away from the track when you have it below 50%. It's much better in general for most hip-hop tracks to have it above 50% because it just adds so much more dynamics to your overall sample. Okay, And then the next time we do a lesson, we're going to go over the EQ, which is your mixing board itself. It's kind of a virtual way of seeing all your levels of what your sample's actually producing, the frequencies that it's producing, what level it's producing those frequencies. That's more of a complex thing, so we're going to go over that next time. Just kind of wanted to give you a quick peek. So today, this is what we did. We chopped up a vocal sample, and I really enjoyed my time with you guys. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put it in the comments section. Let me go ahead and close this out. Let me look at you face to face for a second. Y'all have a good night, and I really appreciate you taking your time to learn from me today. You have a good one. See you later.